Take your place in the Coaching Lounge. Be inspired by discussions with motivational guests, compelling speakers, key people of influence, and models of success. Learn unique processes, strategies, and tips that will transform your life. Tune into previous episodes on www.thecoachinglounge.co.uk. Like our page on Facebook via The Coaching Lounge. Follow us on Twitter @SatelliteCoach. Thank you for joining your host, Rebecca Gordon, in The Coaching Lounge. Tune in, relax, engage, and transform your life now. I'm your host, Rebecca Gordon, and today my expert is the inspiring Mark Mawhinney. Now, Mark is the founder of Natural Born Coaches, and Mark will tell us a lot more about that during the call today. But what I love about Mark is that he is on a mission. And he, in the past, he's actually been a lifelong entrepreneur who began his coaching business after starting several other companies, including one that grew to 100 employees. And Mark has got a passion and speciality in helping other coaches build successful businesses by defining their target markets and implementing strategies to better manage their time and make more sales. Now, in today's show, I really do want to get to explore with Mark. The title of the show I'm calling it is The Conversation That Every New Coach Needs to Hear. So what I want to explore with Mark is some of the concepts about finding your niche, how to get clients through your door, how to apply business principles alongside your passion, and also what inspired Mark to start Natural Born Coaches. So Mark, welcome to the Coaching Lounge.
Hi Rebecca, how are you?
I'm great, thank you very much. And
Sounds good.
yes, okay, thank you. Having looked at your website, I know you do lots of podcasts with other coaches. And tell us how Natural Born Coaches, how that concept came into being, please.
Yeah, I'll give you the kind of short version, I guess, so I don't bore you with a long, detailed journey of the podcast. Make a long story short, my niche is helping other coaches and especially newer coaches or soon-to-be coaches. And I just decided that I needed a vehicle to get the message out there more than I was getting it out there. So I had to decide, is it going to be more through more videos, hit YouTube hard? Is it going to be blogging? Is it going to be, churning out a bunch of books? What's it going to be? And I settled on podcasting. I'd been a fan of podcasting for probably 5 years, but that was as a listener and didn't know anything about putting one together. And I just put my mind to it. I said, I'm going to learn how to do this whole podcasting thing. And kind of went from there. Now, I knew how I wanted to do it. I wanted it to be interview-based because I enjoy talking with interesting people all over the world. And I knew that I wanted to interview successful coaches to help other coaches learn. And I knew that I wouldn't have any trouble filling a daily show 7 days a week because, as you're probably aware from talking to coaches, you know that they're extremely open,
yes,
willing to help, very free with their time. And I'd had a lot of off-the-record conversations before I even thought about podcasting with coaches. So I was pretty confident that I could make it work, and it's been going very well.
Right, okay, so you do daily shows.
I do. I feel crazy sometimes doing 7 days a week, but yeah, it's,
yes. So,
it's going smoothly.
Okay, so on that note, since we're on the subject, what are some of the standout shows for you?
Well, it's kind of like I have 160-some children
Wow.
now, I guess, as we're recording this. We've had almost 200 episodes, so I hate to say I prefer one over the other. I'll mention a couple that stand out. One of your fellow Brits is David Ralph from Join Up Dots. He's the host of that show, and I was on David's show previously, and I really enjoyed it. I loved his style. It was candid, free-flowing, just a really fun time. So when I had to choose what guest to invite for my 100th episode, which took place back, I believe, February of 2015, I chose David to be on the show, and he was very gracious. He came on the show, and we had a great time. So episode number 100 definitely stands out because if you told me before I released the first one, that number 100 was coming up, and then, it would have been a little bit mind-blowing. And now as we record this interview, I'm getting close to 200.
Wow.
So it's, time flies when you're having fun.
That is amazing. That's so inspiring, I must say. And let's just talk about your inspiration, because looking at your background, I mean, actually, can you share your background with the listeners? What has brought you to this moment?
Yeah, my background's in real estate. I guess where you're at, it's I think you call them estate agents.
Yes.
At 21 years of age, I became a real estate agent here in Canada and worked my butt off through my 20s. I worked a lot of 80, 90, 100-hour weeks, and I had a cell phone glued to my ear most of those times. Although, funny, when I started in 2000, I remember having a pager and a pocket full of quarters. So
you're going
if
back
I was
a bit
driving
now.
around town and the pager went, I'd have to pull over to a convenience store and hop in a phone booth, which I don't think we have many phone booths left now in 2015.
Yes.
So, I feel old now. It was only in 2000 just with technology. So, I worked hard through my 20s. I built up a team because I got very busy. I was attracting a ton of clients. Business was just booming. It was doubling every year consistently, so it was really crazy. And by 2009, I had launched my own company. I had about 100 employees. I had 5 different companies under a couple of roofs that all were in that real estate sort of niche. And then in 2009, I went through business closure. So it was a case, I think, where it was being too aggressive at the wrong time with the growth. And we all know what was going on with the global real estate market back around 2009. And and unfortunately everything collapsed. Now I've gone through struggles since then, but it was really a business closure that led to me getting into coaching because I was helped back to my feet by several coaches and mentors. And I thought, wow, I'd love to be doing this for a business and for a career. And that's how I got into coaching.
Okay, so can I ask you then, you've got personal experience of the transformation that can occur in one's life through coaching. How particularly did it help you having a coach?
Well, I'll give you a good example. When I went through that closure, it was probably a few weeks after it. Someone reached out to me that I didn't even know at the time, and now I consider him a mentor and a friend at this point 5 years later, or more than 5 years later. But he asked me out for coffee. He knew what I was going through because it was plastered in the local newspapers, a lot at that time. And he was right around about an hour away from my home city, so I drove up to meet with him. I didn't feel like getting out for coffee at that time. Well, first, I'm not a coffee drinker. I prefer to have hot chocolate if I go to to Starbucks or wherever. But I got out for him at a time when I felt like probably just crawling under the bed and not coming out for a while. And it just totally shifted my energy because it was during that conversation that he stressed to me that, hey, I've been through a few of these as well, and every entrepreneur goes through these struggles. And he said to me, he said, in 5 years, you're not even going to be thinking about this. And I thought he was nuts at the time when he said that. I said, oh, no, I was in that woe is me sort of time, where I'll never, recover from this, and it's over, and I'm done. And it's funny because at the 5-year mark from that closure, I thought back to that meeting, and I thought, yeah, he's right. I'm not thinking about this. It's like a wound or a scar that's sort of healed over. But yeah, totally shifted my energy by hearing him talking, and my mood was instantly better after speaking with him. And we carried on with a mentee relationship, and he's been a very big help to my business since then.
Excellent. And thank goodness for that meeting, eh?
I'm glad I took the meeting. And I always remember Donald Trump when he was going through his struggles back in the early 90s when he was, I don't know what he was, $900 million in the hole or something. And I remember one of his books, he was telling a story where he was invited out to some sort of formal event, and he didn't feel like going because he was going through the same thing I was, just on obviously a much larger scale. And he ended up going out to that dinner in New York when everybody was sort of whispering behind his back, and he was kind of a joke with everything going on. And he made a connection to a banker, I believe, at that formal event that ended up helping him stave off bankruptcy and to make a comeback. So it's very important when you're going through those trials and tribulations, as tempting as it is to sort of close the curtains and stay in a dark room and not come out of your hole. I think it's very important that you get back out there and you get the action going and the activity, because you never know what kind of opportunities are going to come from that.
Okay. So we're now, thank you so much for that, Mark, for sharing that story. We're now moving into information that will help new or upcoming coaches.
Relax in the coaching lounge and engage with compelling, motivational speakers. Be prepared to transform your inner world to shape your outer world through empowering discussions. Tune into thecoachinglounge.co.uk now.
Now, certainly, you know, when I started my coaching training, I was so committed to it. I knew this was what I wanted to do. And in training, you know, you're told you can make X amount of money. It's not that you're in it for the money as a coach, you know. I know coaches, it's a passion that we have. But it's been a sort of organic and evolving process. So, for a new and aspiring coach, what would you say about things to be aware of when you're starting your journey into coaching?
Ooh, I mean, it's tough to answer that in a bite-sized response. I'll say something first just to follow up on what you mentioned, because I get where you're coming from by saying that it's not about the money, but playing devil's advocate, I always stress to my clients who are coaches, because that's who I work with, that it's important not to shy away from wanting to make money. I think a lot of coaches are a little sheepish admitting that. And I've always contended that the best coaches are the ones that are making a lot of money, because I know myself, I'm a much better coach when my bank account's higher than when it's lower.
Of course, yes.
And I have a saying that you can't coach on an empty stomach. Mm-hmm. So if you're worried about your bills and you're going through a tough time financially, you're not going to feel like giving 110% to that client, because your mind's in other places. So there's nothing wrong with don't be sheepish about wanting to make money. I think any good coach should want to make money. I know when I hire coaches to help me, I want to work with coaches that want to make a lot of money, because I think it's important to be compensated for that value that you're putting out there. Mm-hmm. Very big key for coaches, which I think is probably the most important thing for new coaches, is as early as you can decide on a niche, very unique, targeted niche, and laser-like focus. And don't make the mistake I made when I jumped out into coaching. I said, hey, I'm going to be a business coach. I'll work with any entrepreneur under the sun. And it doesn't work that way. It's too wide, it's too general, and it's better to focus on a very targeted niche.
So how, I'm going to ask you another question there about the business. I'll come back to that. But in terms of finding a niche, I mean, isn't that easier said than done?
Yeah, I guess it comes for different people. It can come easier, it can come harder, but it's not a hard thing if you take time to actually concentrate and do a little bit of thinking. And the way that I came up with my niche, well, a couple ways. First, when I realized I had to narrow down my niche, I thought, which clients do I have the most fun working with? And if I'm going to be doing this for many, many years and decades, what group of people do I want to work with? And when I looked at my client roster, I compared a couple of the bricks and mortar people that I was helping out I had a couple coaches that I was working with as clients. And it was the coaches that I looked forward to the most every week for the calls coming up. So just in my gut, I knew that was probably the right answer. And I also, a couple other things for me was I knew the trials and the struggles that coaches went through, because I had been going through those same things. And that was a big thing. And then for me, I like coaches because coaches get the value of coaching. You don't have to sell them on it compared to Joe the plumber, where you have to spend time actually convincing them that coaching's worth it. Mm-hmm. Coaches get it because they're doing it as a career. A very helpful exercise for me, I went through a mind mapping exercise with a piece of blank white paper and a pen. And that was very huge for me as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're talking about attracting the ideal client, and you've given a technique for doing that. I'm just interested to know then, I mean, you very quickly found your niche. I mean, for myself then, I'm going to give myself as example, and I've mentioned before, it's an evolving process. Is it possible from the coaches you've interviewed to have more than one niche, to have a few niches? What's your viewpoint on that?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. My thought on it is if you're going to have a couple niches, I would focus on one niche at a time. But in your life or in your business coaching career, you could have a couple. So you could change your niche as time goes on. I wouldn't necessarily pick 3 or 4 niches at the same time to try to focus on, because what did Confucius say? Man who chases 2 rabbits catches neither.
Right.
So a good example is with Gary Vaynerchuk, who a lot of your listeners probably heard of. When he first kind of burst onto the scene, it was with online wine videos. When he took over his parents' wine store, he ended up taking it online and had Wine Library TV. And he did very well because YouTube was just coming out into popularity, and he used that medium very effectively, doing these zany videos about wine. I remember he had one video showing which children's cereal went best paired with which wine, just really interesting ones. But he didn't stay in that wine niche for that long. It was a couple years, and then he wrote the book Crush It, which introduced him to a whole new audience. It was talking about how he used social media to get his message out there, and now suddenly he was able to change niches, and now he's in a broader social media marketing type niche. He doesn't talk about wine a whole lot. And, he has a goal to own the New York Jets, so I'm sure he'll be in football at some point. I shouldn't say football. You probably think of football different, I guess. We won't get into the football soccer debate here. I don't want to make any listeners angry.
Okay. So what we're going to do now then is have a short break, and then when we come back on the other side, I'm going to pick up on the other question relating to business.
Usually, we struggle through life alone, with outdated beliefs and self-sabotaging actions that bring the same results. How different would it be if you had a personal success coach who helped you make the shift and create a plan for happiness? You will fearlessly align your values, achieve important goals, and reframe your perspective when you have coaching with me. Email Rebecca at info@satellitelifecoaching.com. Book your free discovery session and change your life.
You're in the Coaching Lounge with Rebecca Gordon and Mark Mawini, who is the founder of Natural Born Coaches. And we're actually having a conversation. It's the conversation that every new coach needs to hear. And just before the break, Mark said that actually, as a coach, you have a passion, but it's not just all about the passion. You actually do need to align with business principles. So, Mark, I want you to sort of explore some of the systems and processes that a new coach might need to consider as they're building their business.
Well, I mean, the first step is to treat it like a business. I think too many coaches treat coaching like a hobby. And if you're not being paid for what you're doing, or if you're being paid peanuts, then it's probably a hobby and it's not a business. So too many coaches that I see and I talk with aren't treating it seriously. Like, nobody would go out and open up a bricks and mortar store on Main Street and then say, hey, come on in and take whatever items you want here, and you don't have to pay me for it. We'll call it's a freebie. Just pay, come back or refer your friends. Of course you wouldn't do that. But coaching, a lot of coaches will give those too much away. And I'm not talking about a free consultation in the beginning or a strategy session. I'm talking about an awful lot of work. And I made that mistake as well in the early stages. The little voice in my head kind of justified those discounted sessions or the pro bono work, because it'd be someone I really wanted to see do better. I wanted to help them, and I thought, well, hey, if I help them, then they're going to refer a bunch of friends over to me, and they're going to come back to me for more work down the road. And it just doesn't work out that way, because if you're not getting paid what you're worth, then there's going to be hidden resentment, even if you don't realize it, and you're not going to put that full effort into the coaching session. So very important to treat it as a business and make sure you're charging a fair amount and you're getting paid what you're worth.
So in a way, I mean, it's sort of like wearing two hats, if you like, really. But in terms of the business, I mean, you've got to actually deal with the finances. You've got to have your systems to create, booking sessions and certain things. And it can be quite a steep learning curve for a new or aspiring coach. So, I mean, I know that you work very much with coaches. These are things you give coaches support with.
It is, and the other thing to stress, you're right, there's two hats. So you could be the best coach in the world. You could be absolutely amazing for getting results for clients. But if you're a crappy marketer and you can't actually get your name and your message out there and you can't get people to hire you, it doesn't matter how good of a coach you are. You're just not going to last because you're not getting any clients coming through the door. Unfortunately, I think that the person that has a better chance of making it as a coach is the excellent marketer, because they're going to improve as a coach as they get more clients through the door and they're going to get better. But if you're a coach that can't sell and can't convince people to hire you, then you're not going to be a coach for very long.
And you've touched on something there. I mean, the marketing, that is mammoth, I would say. And one of the learning curves for me was actually, I'm not an accountant, so I buy in the services as an accountant. I'm not, an absolute marketer. So it's actually to go to the services that can support your business to run and function optimally. So what are some of the support systems that you're aware of that you can mention?
Well, I mean, you mentioned accounting. I'm not an accountant. I hate, I'm not the type of guy that's going to take a Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening to gather receipts and plug them into spreadsheets and have a good time doing it. I know some people really enjoy that. So that's one way for help. Let's say if you're not good with social media, you just don't take to it. You don't even want to be bothered with Twitter, Facebook, etc., then, maybe you look at delegating your social media. There's a lot of virtual assistant services nowadays, and the prices are coming down with each passing year. Wow. So maybe you hand off your social media. You got to be careful when it comes to, you could hand off your content and delegate and say, I'm going to get someone to help me with blog posts and so on. I'm not a huge fan of that, because I think that you want your potential clients to hear your voice and not be just sort of a form letter, lifeless type blog post from elsewhere. But there's so many things that you can actually hand off and delegate, so you can do the things that you enjoy doing.
Fiverr, there's Fiverr, isn't there? And
there is, yeah.
Yes.
And I probably shouldn't say this. I don't want people to think less of me, but when you look at Natural Born Coaches, I've gotten a lot of compliments on the logo for the show, and everybody's like, oh, what firm did you get to do it? Yeah. And I'm thinking of making up a really fancy name with like four last names or something, Right. But I got that done on Fiverr. Now, I checked the guy out. He had a great portfolio, so I knew he'd do a good job. The intro, the outros for my podcast, they were done on Fiverr. They cost a total of $30. The whole setting up of the podcast cost me maybe a couple $100 tops, because I bought a good microphone, and that was at the big expense. But if I'd gone out there and gone the normal ways of hiring a traditional design company to handle it, and professional audio services and so on, then I would have been well over $1,000, probably quite a bit more. So yeah, I definitely leaned on Fiverr to get it out there. I didn't hold off using Fiverr or cheaper services.
Because it's being smart about it, isn't it? And certainly starting out, it's about using the finances in the best way. And on Fiverr, people are there with their gifts and their services, which are great. So why not?
It's all about getting the podcast out there. And one of the things I do is I help coaches. Part of my service is help them launch a podcast. And I always tell them, don't get too hung up trying to get this perfect podcast. You're going to go through a number of versions probably before the first year's even up. But don't delay 6 months, a year and a half to get it out there, because you're saving up your money for all this fancy equipment and stuff. Just get it out there and get rolling.
And as you've said, as time has gone on, we're living in a real technological age. Things are becoming more prominent and predominant in the world. Yes. Now, Mark, what we're going to do now is just have a little short break, and I'm going to come back and draw on your expertise based on the coaching practice.
Think big for a moment. If you could create your best life, how would this look? What if, in just 30 minutes, you had a plan of action to get closer to your dream? Make the impossible possible and claim your free session today. Visit www.satellitelifecoaching.com now.
My name is Rebecca Gordon and I'm here with Mark Mawhinney in the comfort of the Coaching Lounge. And we've looked at the some business principles of things to be aware of wearing that business hat. Because Mark has interviewed, well over or up to over 200 coaches, Mark, I just want to ask you about the components or the blueprint based on this question. What is it to be a great coach?
Yeah, I mean, that's another great question. You're firing on all cylinders today, Rebecca.
Well, thank you so much, Mark. Hey, I'm following your footsteps. I want your job.
Yeah. To boil it down to, I guess, a bite-sized answer again is I think that the trait of a successful coach or great coach is comes down to one word, and that's results. So your goal with that client is to get results for them. You're trying to get them from point A to point B. And I tell the coaches I'm working with is always remember that one word, just tattoo that word to your forehead or put it somewhere that you're seeing it all the time. That's your goal. The client doesn't care how you're going to help them get there. They don't care about a lot of the stuff that we think they care about. All they care about are the results. So if they want to move their income from $3,000 a month to $10,000 a month, then that's what you should be concerned with is the results, and keep your eye on that ball, I guess, at all times. So that's probably the most simplistic answer that I can give in the time that we have for what makes a great coach.
Of course, and that's a superb answer. Thank you. Just touching more on the principles of the coaching. Now, in your expertise and from people you've interviewed, what's the feedback about being a certified accredited coach as opposed to non-accredited? I mean, I don't know if you can share some insight on clients you've worked with or clients that your interviewees have worked with. Are people wanting their coaches to be certified, or does it not really matter?
Well, I mean, I could speak primarily from the North American example. I have spoken to a number of coaches in the UK. We've had some great guests, but where I'm based in North America, I sort of have a handle on the feeling over here. And this is nothing against the certification programs of companies out there, because there's some excellent ones. But in my own experience, I find it's mostly coaches talking about certification and not clients. Again, going back to the example of the client looking to move their monthly income from $3,000 to $10,000, they don't care what certifications or what diplomas you have on the wall. If you can get them that result, then they're going to hire you and they're going to refer you to as many people as possible. So it's not to scare people away from certifications. I think you should always be looking to improve yourself. Where I'm not a fan of certifications is when you have people delaying things for too long, and I've seen people delay becoming a coach for too long because they're saving up for these certifications that could really be taken as it gets started. They should take their experience from the school of hard knocks and their life lessons. And the other thing, too, just because someone's not certified, I'm not certified. Now, that being said, I spend thousands of dollars a year on personal development between courses, programs, conferences, and so on, and I'm a huge fan of that. So I'm always a little bit leery of just saying that you should definitely be certified or you shouldn't. It comes down to personal choice, but don't think that you have to have a ton of certifications to be a successul coach.
Yeah, yes. I mean, certainly, I've had clients come and say, well, actually, it doesn't matter what qualifications you have. They resonate with you as a coach, and they resonate with a niche. Where I've had the opposing, where people have said, actually, what qualifications have you got to be able to help me? So it's sort of like, horses for courses, really,
Yeah, that's right. You see it in some niches probably a little more. Now, I would suspect there's some niches where certification would be, it'd be a little bit different, that people be more concerned with it. But I can honestly say I don't think I've ever been asked by a client. Now, I deal with coaches, but I don't think anyone's ever said, Mark, I'm ready to hire you. As long as you can send over a copy of your certification, we'll get started. Okay. It just hasn't come up.
Yeah. Now, Mark, I'm going to touch on, you've mentioned this before, you have alluded to it, but let's just talk about it in a little bit more depth. what is the importance of a practicing or a fully fledged working coach having their own coach?
I think it's huge. At any given time, I'm always working with at least one coach helping me with something, and often it's a couple different coaches. So a good example is not that long ago, I jumped into the world of webinars. I was probably late to the game, but I got started with webinars. Knowing nothing about webinars other than being a guest or an audience member on them, I hired an excellent webinar coach, actually in your neck of the woods. He's in London, named Muhammad Ali. Now, it's not, I'm not boxing because I'm under 5'10". I probably weigh about 160 pounds, so you wouldn't want to see me in the ring. But Mo is what he's called for short, and Mo really helped me with getting the webinar processes down pat and becoming familiar with it. So I find I do better when I have a coach. That way it's a shortcut to success. I'm taking someone that's already achieved what I want to achieve, and I'm learning from them. And it's a lot easier than me going into research mode and spending months and months digging into webinar research on the internet. I just don't have the time for it.
Absolutely. And it's walking the talk, isn't it?
It is, yeah. If I'm a coach and I'm preaching the value of coaching all day, but then I don't hire a coach because I say, oh, no, I don't, if I'm saying it's not worth the money, then it sort of hurts my efforts when I'm trying to sell my coaching services. It's not quite congruent.
I mean, or certainly to have a coach or a mentor if you are a coach, but I know it's helped me to get over some limiting beliefs when I have to reach certain areas in my business. So I would never be without a coach myself. And, when I've coached coaches in training and they have this real struggle with charging for their services when they're setting out. And, the talk is, oh, well, I'm only training, I can't charge anything, or I've just qualified, I can't charge anything or that much. So how does someone get over the issue about charging what they're worth and establishing a criteria for their service?
It's funny you mentioned that. I just ran into, last week I started working with a new coach, and I'm helping her set up a podcast. She's got a really cool message and a niche. She's working on empowering mothers, and, she's very clear there, but we were setting up her programs, and I wanted to set it up. My recommendation for a program was it should be $997. And she said, oh, geez, I can't go high end right out of the gate. And I said, well, $997 isn't high end. We're not talking about 5 or 6 figures here. not to make light of $997. I know that people work hard to make that much money, but in the coaching world, that's not really high end. And she said, well, maybe I should go at $500, and then people will get to see what I could do, and they'll like me, and then they'll pay more down the road. And I just really steered her away from that because I didn't want her running into what I ran into, which we talked about earlier, which was working for discounted fees, putting all this time and energy into it, and then getting really frustrated, and it hurt the client as well. I'm not as good as a coach when I'm not charging what I'm worth, and I'm a big believer that clients, it should hurt a little bit for them to pay a coach, because if it's not hurting for them to pay you, they're not going to really put much into it. If you're charging $20 for whatever you're doing for coaching, or $50, well, they got that in their pocket, and they're not going to think much if they don't put much into it. So as soon as you can charge more for your services, get over that hump and get past that mental block and make sure you're charging enough.
And certainly I'm hearing that you're advocating as well to actually have different products that can be monetized.
Exactly, yeah. I've really fleshed mine out a lot here in the last 6 months. For I shouldn't say a long time, but for quite a while, I didn't have enough offerings, and I'm not saying you need 20 different offerings, but, I've got, I guess, a freebie or a giveaway that I have for an opt-in. I've got a Udemy video course that's $49. I've got, a program that's a couple $100 and then going all the way up to a couple $1,000. So I can touch on a bunch of different price points. If someone's not ready to commit a few $1,000s for my flagship program, well then, hey, why don't you start with the $49 video course, and then, that can help you out and let me know if you need anything more. So I do think it's important to flesh it out and hit different price points.
Right, okay. And on that note, Mark, can you tell us about your new initiative, please?
Well, I mean, as we're recording this, I'm getting ready to launch a surprise, a niching program where we've talked about niching, and that's going to be. I guess I'll have more details probably by the time this is released, but people can go to naturalborncoaches.com, and I'm really excited about that. That'll be my flagship program, which is designed to help coaches come up with a really cool, unique niche, but not only come up with that niche and choose it, but to also dominate it. Just recently, I launched a podcasting program to help coaches launch podcasts to get their message out there. That can be found at naturalbornpodcasters.com. I went with the real original name there. And having a lot of fun with that. We have already had probably 20 people join up here in just the first few days to join up with that program as well. So, lots going on, having a lot of fun, and it's going to be a busy 2015.
Well, I'm saying you are definitely very busy. That's great. So, Mark, just in the closing final moments here now, for someone who's so busy, I mean, certainly you're an entrepreneur, you've got experience of multiple businesses, but how do you maintain your energy and your creativity? What's the secret here?
Well, the best advice I could give is make sure you're doing something that you like. And I know that sounds like very simplistic common sense, but if you're doing something you don't enjoy, it's really hard to get that energy up unless you're drinking a ton of Red Bull every day, and even then you're going to crash. So the easiest thing for me, it's very easy. I feel like last Saturday night I had a coaching call. I don't usually do them on Saturday night, but this one I was free. I felt like, okay, let's do the coaching call and get that client started. And I felt like doing it didn't even feel like work. Because I love connecting with people. I love doing things like this, like our chat today. Yes. So make sure that you choose something that you really enjoy, because you're going to be doing a lot of it, and it's torture if you're not having fun.
And fun is operative words.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, Mark Mawhinney, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And you've been sharing with us some great tips and ideas and awareness of things that new coaches need to be aware of. And if it is that someone wants to be in contact with you, you've given us your website. You've also said, in the previous chat we had, that you can also direct people to particular coaching calls if they have a particular query. Can you just say a little bit more about that, please?
Right. Yeah. If one of your listeners have, let's say, an interest in a certain field of coaching or a type of coaching, the offer I would make is feel free to reach out to me. Mark at naturalborncoaches.com's the email, and that's MARC, not K. And for example, if you say I'm interested in doing a certain something with coaching and I want to find out how to do blank, well, odds are I could probably direct you to 5 episodes out of those couple hundred that would be the best ones to listen to. So you don't have to listen to all couple hundred, although I'd love for you to do that. But I could probably give you a shortcut and recommend the best ones to listen to for your particular need.
Great. Okay. Because actually, we don't always have to reinvent the wheel, do we?
No. There's no sense reinventing the wheel. You might as well find somebody that's already done what you want to do and then just copy it. Yeah.
Okay. So, Mark, there's lots more we can talk about, but I do respect your time. And just to say thank you for joining me here in the Coaching Lounge, and we will stay connected.
Thanks, Rebecca.
The Coaching Lounge. If you are a new coach and you would like a free 30-minute strategy session to generate ideas on how to take your coaching practice forward, contact me now on 0121 411 9500 or email info@satellitelifecoaching.com.
Take your place in the Coaching Lounge. Be inspired by discussions with motivational guests, compelling speakers, key people of influence, and models of success. Learn unique processes, strategies, and tips that will transform your life. Tune into previous episodes on www.thecoachinglounge.co.uk. Like our page on Facebook via The Coaching Lounge. follow us on Twitter @SatelliteCoach. Thank you for joining your host, Rebecca Gordon, in the Coaching Lounge. Tune in, relax, engage, and transform your life now.